The station floated in the darkness of space like a metal beast waiting to feed. It was old and ugly, built from parts of dead ships and broken dreams. Rust covered its walls. Strange smells filled its air. And inside its belly, living things were bought and sold like pieces of meat. Pressed her back against the cold wall of the maintenance tunnel and watched through a small hole in the metal grate. Below her, the slave market was alive with noise and movement. Aliens of every shape and size walked between cages and platforms. Some were tall with scales. Some were short with too many eyes. Some floated. Some crawled. All of them had come to buy or sell. 8 months ago had been a scientist. She had studied animals on distant worlds. She had written papers about creatures that no human had ever seen before. She had been happy on her research ship, surrounded by her work and her crew. Then the pirates came. They killed half the crew in the first minute. They captured the rest. They sold to this station for a price so low it made her sick to remember. Now she cleaned tunnels and fixed broken pipes. She was invisible here, just another small human doing small work. But had not wasted these 8 months. She had watched. She had listened. She had learned. She knew every tunnel in this station. She knew when the guards changed shifts. She knew which doors had weak locks. She knew which aliens could be bribed and which ones would kill her for looking at them wrong. She was waiting for the right moment to escape. Today was not that day. A loud sound echoed through the market, heavy footsteps. The crowd began to move apart like water around a stone. Voices grew quiet. Even the creatures in the cages stopped their crying. Warlord had arrived. Had seen him before, but only from far away. Up close, through the grate, he was even more terrifying. He stood 3 meters tall, almost twice the height of a human. His body was covered in thick green scales that looked like armor. His eyes were yellow with black slits, like a snake. His mouth was full of teeth that could bite through bone. But the worst thing about him was what he wore. Bones. Hundreds of small bones hung from chains around his neck and arms. The bones of his enemies. The bones of people who had challenged him and lost. He wore death like jewelry. Behind, his soldiers dragged cages through the market. Each cage held something different. Strange birds with fire in their feathers. Worms as thick as trees. Insects with diamond shells. All of them rare. All of them valuable. All of them stolen from worlds that had conquered. Did not care about any of them. Until she saw the last cage. It was smaller than the others, barely big enough for a large dog. Inside, pressed against the bars, was a creature that made his heart stop. A shrike cub. Had studied shrikes during her time as a scientist. She had never seen one in person, but she had read every paper, watched every recording, studied every piece of information she could find. Shrikes were the most dangerous predators in the known galaxy. Adults could grow as large as small ships. Their claws could cut through metal. Their minds could touch other minds, sending fear into their prey before they attacked. Even thus, people were afraid of adult shrikes. But this was not an adult. This was a baby. The cub was covered in soft black fur that would one day become hard as armor. It had 6 legs, each one ending in small claws that had not yet learned to kill. Its eyes were silver, wide and wet with tears. It was shaking. It was scared. It was making small sounds that recognized from her research. It was crying for its mother. Stopped in front of the cage. The market became silent. Everyone watched. Everyone waited. The warlord looked at the cub with disgust on his face. His yellow eyes showed no pity, no mercy, only contempt for something small and weak. This is the terror of the stars. Voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. This is what we are supposed to fear. He kicked the cage. The metal box flew across the ground, spinning and crashing into a wall. The cub inside screamed. Not a roar, not a growl, a scream like a child who did not understand why it was being hurt. The crowd laughed. They laughed because it was powerful and they were afraid. They laughed because the cub was weak and weakness was funny to them. They laughed because laughing was easier than feeling anything else. Did not laugh. Something changed inside her chest. It was not anger, not yet. It was something colder, something older, something that humans had carried inside them since they first stood up on their hind legs and looked at the darkness of the night. Walked to the cage. He reached through the bars with one massive hand and grabbed the cub by the loose skin on its neck. He pulled it half out of the cage, letting its small body hang in the air. The cub wailed. Its silver eyes rolled with terror. Its 6 legs kicked at nothing. Its cries echoed through the silent market. "I think I will kill it slowly," said. "I will show everyone that even the mighty shrikes are nothing before me." More laughter, nervous laughter. Nobody wanted to see this, but nobody would stop it. His hands pressed flat against the metal wall. She could feel her heart beating in her chest, fast, hard, like a drum calling for war. She thought about her escape plan. She had worked on it for months. She knew exactly how to get off this station. She knew which ship to steal. She knew which route to take. If she moved now, if she did something stupid, all of that would be gone. She would die here in this ugly place for a creature that was not even human. The cub screamed again and remembered something her grandmother had told her when she was young. They had been watching the news about a disaster far away, had asked why people were helping strangers they would never meet. Her grandmother had smiled and said, "Because that is what makes us human. We help, even when it is hard, even when it is dangerous, even when no one is watching. We help because something inside us knows that we are all connected. That pain felt by one is pain felt by all. That is our gift. That is our curse. That is who we are." Looked at the cub hanging from his fist. A baby, alone, terrified, waiting to die for the entertainment of monsters. She had wanted to escape this station. Now she wanted something else. The maintenance tunnel had an exit that led to the market floor. It was small, meant for workers to slip in and out without being seen. Had used it many times to watch the market, to learn its patterns, to plan her escape. Today she would use it for something different. She moved through the darkness like a ghost. 8 months of crawling through tunnels had made her silent. 8 months of watching had made her patient. 8 months of surviving had made her hard in ways she did not fully understand yet. When she reached the exit, she paused. Her hand rested on the panel that would open the door. On the other side, a warlord waited with his army. On the other side, death waited with open arms. The cub screamed one more time, opened the door, and stepped into the light. Nobody saw her at first. Stood at the edge of the market, a small figure in dirty gray clothes. Her hair was tied back in a simple knot. Her face was thin from months of bad food. Her hands were rough from hard work. She looked like nothing. She looked like no one. That was about to change. She walked forward. Her footsteps were soft on the metal floor, but somehow they seemed loud in the strange silence that had fallen over the market. The crowd of aliens turned to look at her, one by one, confusion spreading across their faces. What was this? A human, a maintenance worker, walking toward the warlord. Still held the shrike cub in his massive fist. He had not noticed yet. He was too busy enjoying the fear in the cub's silver eyes, too busy planning what tortures he would perform for his audience. Stopped 10 meters away from him. "Let the cub go." Her voice was not loud, but it carried. It cut through the air like a blade through soft flesh. Every alien in the market heard it. Every eye turned toward her. His head moved slowly, like a machine turning to face a new target. His yellow eyes found her, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then his face twisted into something between confusion and amusement. "What did you say?" "I said let the cub go." His voice did not shake. Her body did not move. She stood perfectly still like a rock in a river of fear. Put it down and walk away. Silence, complete and total silence. Even the slaves in their cages stopped making noise. The whole market held its breath, then laughed. It was an ugly sound, wet and rumbling like something dying in a swamp. He dropped the cub back into its cage without care, letting it crash against the bars. Then he turned his full attention to a human. He said the word like it was a joke. A little pink human tells me what to do. He took a step toward her. The ground shook under his weight. His soldiers moved behind him, hands reaching for weapons, grins spreading across their faces. This would be entertaining. This would be fun. Do you know who I am, creature? His voice was almost gentle now, the way a cat's purr is gentle before it kills a mouse. I am destroyer of worlds. I have burned planets. I have eaten the hearts of kings. I have crushed armies beneath my feet. Another step, closer now, could smell him, a scent like old blood and rotting meat. I have killed thousands of beings stronger than you, faster than you, smarter than you. He leaned down, bringing his massive face close to hers. His breath was hot and foul. What makes you think you can stand against me? Looked up at him. She was so small compared to his massive body. Her head barely reached his chest. Her arms were thin where his were thick as trees. By any measure of strength, she should have been terrified. She was not. I know exactly what you are, said. Her voice was calm, almost soft. You are the thing that kicks bobbies. You are the monster that hurts creatures who cannot fight back. You are the coward who wears the bones of the dead because you are afraid people will forget you are dangerous. The market gasped, actually gasped. No one had ever spoken to like this. No one had ever dared. His face changed. The amusement disappeared. The fake gentleness vanished. What remained was pure rage, cold and ancient and terrible. You will die screaming, he said. Maybe, replied, but not today and not by you. She remembered her training, not the scientific training, though that would help later. She remembered the other training, the training her father had insisted on when she was young. The universe is dangerous, he had told her. You are human. People will look at you and see something weak, something easy to hurt. You must learn to show them they are wrong. He had taught her to fight, not the fancy fighting of movies and games, the real fighting, the dirty fighting, the fighting that humans had used for thousands of years to survive against animals bigger and stronger than them. Humans were not the fastest creatures on their home world. They were not the strongest. They did not have claws or fangs or armor, but they had something else. They had endurance. They had adaptability. They had the ability to keep going when everything else had stopped. And when pushed to the edge, they had rage. Attacked. He moved fast, faster than something his size should be able to move. His arms swept towards head, claws extended, aiming to take her head off with a single blow. The strike was perfect. The strike was deadly. The strike hit nothing but air. Head ducked, not backward where his claws could follow, forward into the space beneath his arm. She moved like water flowing around his attack, her body low to the ground, her eyes never leaving his. The crowd made a sound, somewhere between shock and confusion. What had just happened? How had she dodged? Roared and spun, his other arm coming around in a backhand that could crush stone. Again moved, sliding to the side, letting the blow pass close enough to stir her hair but not close enough to touch. She was studying him, watching how he moved, learning his patterns. Humans were good at this. They had spent millions of years hunting creatures larger than themselves. They knew how to watch. They knew how to wait. They knew how to find the weakness in any enemy. Stand still, screamed. His attacks became faster, more wild. He was used to enemies who fought back, who stood their ground, who could be overwhelmed with strength. He was not used to this. This dancing, this dodging, this patient, watching prey that refused to be caught. Said nothing, she moved, she watched, she learned. They had strong scales but weak joints. She had read this in her studies. Their bodies were built for power, not flexibility. Their knees bent in a certain way. Their shoulders had limits. Their necks could only turn so far. She saw's right knee bend slightly wrong when he stepped forward. An old injury, perhaps, or a design flaw in his species. Either way, it was a weakness. She filed this information away and kept moving. The crowd had grown larger now. Word was spreading through the station. A human was fighting the warlord. A tiny human woman was making look like a fool. Some laughed at the idea. Some came to watch the human die. Some, very few, came hopping for something else. In the cage, the Shrike Cub watched with silver eyes that missed nothing. Was breathing hard now. Not from exhaustion, not yet, but from frustration. He had never fought anything like this. His enemies had always been proud warriors who stood and traded blows until one fell. This human fought like smoke, like shadow, like something that existed only to make him look stupid. "Fight me," he roared. "Stop running and fight." Stopped. She stood perfectly still in the center of the market, her arms at her sides, her breathing calm and steady. The crowd fell silent. The soldiers gripped their weapons, even paused, confused by the sudden change. "Okay," said. And then she smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of something old and dangerous. The smile of a species that had clawed its way to the top of a death world through sheer stubborn refusal to die. "Let me show you," said softly, "what happens when you hurt something helpless in front of a human." She moved. Moved like lightning. One moment she was standing still. The next she was inside's guard, past his reaching arms, close enough to touch his scaled chest. The warlord's eyes went wide. No one had ever gotten this close to him in a fight. No one had ever been fast enough or brave enough or crazy enough. Her elbow drove into a spot just below his arm, where the scales were thin and the nerves were close to the surface. She had learned about this weakness in her research. Soldiers wore extra armor there because they knew it was vulnerable. Wore no extra armor. He was the warlord, he feared nothing. The pain that shot through his arm changed that. He screamed, not a roar of anger but a scream of shock and hurt. His right arm went numb, hanging useless at his side. He stumbled backward, trying to create distance, but followed him like a shadow. She hit him again. A strike to the side of his knee, the weak one she had noticed earlier. She did not have the strength to break it, but she did not need to. She just needed to make it hurt. She just needed to make him slow. Fell to one knee. The ground shook with his weight. The crowd around them made sounds of disbelief. The mighty warlord, conqueror of worlds, brought to his knees by a human. His soldiers started to move forward, weapons raised, ready to help their master. "Stay back." His voice was full of pain and rage, but also pride. Even now, even hurt, he would not accept help. He was a warrior. He would win alone or die alone. "This thing is mine to kill." He swung his good arm at. It was slower now, less controlled, driven by anger instead of skill. She caught his wrist with both hands. The market went silent. A human, a small human woman, was holding the arm of a warlord. Tried to pull free. His muscles bulged under his scales. His body shook with effort, but held on. Her grip was like iron. Her arms trembled with the strain, but they did not let go. "How's?" voice was barely a whisper. "How are you doing this?" Looked at him with eyes that held no fear. "Let me tell you something about humans," she said. Her voice was steady, but her body was screaming in pain. Muscles tearing, joints stretching, blood pounding in her ears. "We are not strong, not like you. We are not fast. We do not have claws or scales or fangs." She twisted his arm. He screamed again. "But we come from a world that tried to kill us every single day. Everything on our planet wanted us dead. The animals, the weather, the plants. Even the ground itself would shake and try to swallow us. We should have died. We should have been extinct long before we learned to make fire." Another twist, fell lower, his face now close to hers. "But we did not die. Do you know why? Because we refused. We looked at all the things that wanted to kill us and we said no. We kept going. We kept fighting. We kept surviving. For millions of years, we fought against everything our world threw at us, and we won. Released his arm and grabbed his leg instead, the same leg with the weak knee. She wrapped her arms around it, her body pressed against his scales, her muscles burning with effort. That is what humans are, she said. We are survivors, and when you threaten something we care about, when you hurt something innocent in front of us, we become something else. She pulled. The sound was terrible, wet and crunching, the sound of flesh tearing and bone breaking, the sound of something that should not be possible happening anyway. Pulled with everything she had. She pulled with muscles that were tearing themselves apart. She pulled with a body that was pushing past every limit it had ever known. She pulled with the strength of a species that had never learned how to give up. His leg came off. The warlord fell backward, screaming in a voice that did not sound like a conqueror anymore. It sounded like an animal, like prey, like something small and weak facing something it did not understand. Blood sprayed across the market floor. Green blood, thick and dark, spreading in a pool around the fallen warlord. His leg lay separate from his body, still twitching, nerves firing without direction. Stood over him, the torn limb in her hands. Her nose was bleeding. Her arms hung loose at her sides, muscles torn and useless. Her vision was blurring. Her body was shutting down from the damage it had taken to perform this impossible act. But she was still standing. "Remember this," she said. Her voice was quiet now, almost gentle. "Remember this moment every time you think about hurting something helpless. Remember what a human did to you. Remember that we are everywhere, on every station, on every ship, on every world you think you have conquered." She dropped the leg at his feet. "We are watching, we are waiting, and we do not forget." The market was completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. No one could process what they had just seen. A human, a species they had all considered weak and unimportant, had torn a warlord apart with her bare hands. Soldiers stood frozen. They should have attacked. They should have avenged their master, but something stopped them. Fear, true fear, the kind of fear that comes from watching the impossible happen. If a human could do this too, what could humans do to them? Turned away from the fallen warlord. Each step was agony. Her body was broken in ways she could not count. Blood dripped from her nose and her eyes and her ears. She should have collapsed. She should have died. But she was not finished yet. The Shrike cub was still in its cage, pressing against the bars, its silver eyes fixed on her. It made a small sound, not a cry of fear anymore, but something else. Something like recognition, something like hope. Walked toward it. Behind her was screaming orders through his pain. His soldiers were starting to recover from their shock. The crowd was beginning to scatter. In minutes, this place would be filled with guards and weapons and death. None of that mattered. Reached the cage. The lock was simple, meant to hold creatures, not resist determined hands. She grabbed it and pulled. Metal bent. Bolts snapped. The door swung open. The cub looked at her. She looked at the cub. "Come here," she said softly. "I am going to take you home." The cub climbed into her arms. Its 6 legs wrapped around her body, holding tight but gentle, careful not to hurt her with its small claws. It pressed its face against her chest and made a sound like a purr. Held it close. Around her, chaos was erupting. Guards were running toward them. Weapons were being drawn. Voices were shouting orders. But in that moment, holding the small, warm body against her broken chest, felt something she had not felt in 8 months. "Peace." "Okay," she whispered to the cub. "Time to go." And then she ran. Ran through the station like a ghost carrying fire. Her body should not have been able to move. Her arms were torn, muscles ripped from pulling the warlord's leg from his body. Her ribs were cracked from a blow she had not quite dodged. Blood ran from her nose and dripped down her chin, leaving a trail on the metal floor behind her. But she kept running. The Shrike cub clung to her chest, its 6 legs wrapped tight around her torso. It was surprisingly light for its size, or maybe was just too far past pain to notice the weight anymore. Its silver eyes watched everything, alert and aware, trusting this strange human who smelled of blood and determination. Behind them, alarms screamed, red lights flashed, voices shouted orders in languages did not understand. The whole station was waking up, rising like a beast that had been kicked in its sleep. Did not care about any of it. 8 months of planning, 8 months of watching and learning and memorizing, every tunnel, every door, every weakness in the station's security. She had prepared for an escape, and now that preparation was saving her life. She ducked into a maintenance tunnel, one of the dozens she had used during her time as a worker. The entrance was small, too small for the guards to follow. She squeezed through, protecting the cub with her body, and emerged into darkness. The tunnel was narrow and cold. Water dripped from pipes overhead. Strange creatures skittered away from her footsteps. It was not comfortable, but it was safe. The guards would not find her here. Allowed herself one moment to breathe, just one moment. She leaned against the wall, her chest heaving, her vision swimming with black spots. The cub looked up at her and made a worried sound. "I am okay," she whispered. It was a lie. She was very far from okay, but the cub did not need to know that, just need a moment. She pressed her hand against her ribs. Something shifted inside that should not shift. Definitely broken. Maybe worse. She had felt like this once before when she was young and stupid and had fallen off a cliff while hiking. 3 broken ribs that time. This felt like more. The cub pressed its face against her chest and purred. The sound was deep and soft, vibrating through her body. And where the vibration touched, the pain seemed to fade a little. Looked down at the small creature in surprise. Shrikes were predators, everyone knew that. They hunted. They killed. They were feared across the galaxy. But here was this baby, this tiny ball of black fur and silver eyes trying to comfort her, trying to help her the only way it knew how. "Thank you," said softly. "We need to keep moving." The tunnel system was complex, built over centuries by different species who did not talk to each other. Had spent months mapping it, finding paths that others had forgotten, discovering shortcuts that were not in any official record. She moved through the darkness with the confidence of someone who belonged there. Turn left at the broken pipe, climb over the collapsed section, squeeze through the gap where 2 walls did not quite meet. Each step took her closer to freedom. The cub was silent now, watching everything with those strange silver eyes, wondered what it was thinking. Could it understand what was happening? Did it know that she was trying to save it? Or was it just following instinct, clinging to the one creature that had shown it kindness? It did not matter. Either way, she would get it home. The docking bay was on the far side of the station. Under normal conditions, it would take an hour to walk there through the main corridors. Through the maintenance tunnels, it took 3 hours. 3 hours of crawling and climbing and squeezing through spaces that were never meant for human bodies. By the time reached the service entrance to the docking bay, she was barely conscious. Blood loss, pain, exhaustion. Her body had given everything it had, and now it was demanding payment. Her hands shook. Her legs felt like water. Every breath was a knife in her chest. But she was here. Through the small window in the service door, she could see the docking bay. Ships of every size and shape sat in their berths, waiting for crews that had fled to see the chaos in the market. One ship caught her attention. It was small, a courier vessel designed for speed rather than combat. Its crew was not aboard. They had left the boarding ramp down, probably planning to come back quickly. They had not counted on a human tearing their warlord apart. Smiled it hurt. "That one," she whispered to the cub, "that is our ride." She opened the door and stepped into the docking bay. Her feet made soft sounds on the metal floor. The bay was not empty, but the few aliens present were not paying attention. They were gathered around screens, watching footage of the fight in the market, watching Ter's leg off. She moved through the shadows, staying low, staying quiet. The cub understood somehow. It pressed itself flat against her chest, making no sound, barely breathing. 20 meters to the ship, then 10, then 5. Nobody saw her. She climbed the boarding ramp. She sealed the door behind her. She made her way to the cockpit and strapped herself into the pilot's seat. The cub sat in her lap, watching her work with curious eyes. Had never flown a courier ship before, but she had studied ships during her time on the research vessel. She understood the basics: power systems, navigation, life support. The controls were different, but the principles were the same. She brought the engines online. Warning lights flashed on the station's control systems, but it was too late. The ship was already moving, sliding out of its berth, turning toward the vast darkness of space. Alarms screamed through the station. Guards ran toward the docking bay, weapons charged, ships prepared to pursue. But was already gone. The courier ship shot out of the station like a bullet from a gun. It turned toward empty space, away from the patrols, away from the weapons, away from everything that had held prisoner for 8 months. She allowed herself to feel it now. The pain, the exhaustion, the relief. It crashed over her like a wave, threatening to drag her under. The cub climbed up her chest and pressed its nose against her cheek. It made a sound, soft and worried, like it was asking if she was okay. "I am going to pass out soon," said honestly. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, distant and weak. "But first, I need to set a course. I need to take you home." She pulled up the navigation system. Her fingers trembled on the controls. She made mistakes, had to correct them, had to try again. But eventually, she found what she was looking for. The Shrike, or rather, the quarantine zone around it. No one knew the exact location of the planet itself, but everyone knew where not to go. A sphere of space that ships entered and never left. Set a course for the center of that sphere. "Your mother is out there somewhere," she told the cub. "I am going to find her. I am going to give you back." The cub purred, leaned back in her seat. The stars stretched into lines as the ship entered faster than light travel. The cockpit was quiet now, just the hum of engines and the soft breathing of the cub in her lap. She closed her eyes. Sleep came for her, dark and deep. But before she fell completely, she felt the cub curl up against her stomach, warm, safe, trusting. She had done something stupid, something reckless, something that had probably destroyed her body forever. But the cub was free, the cub was with her, the cub was going home. That was enough. Slept, and the ship carried them both toward the most dangerous region of space in the known galaxy. Toward the Shrikes. Toward home. Woke to warning alarms and silver eyes. The cub was standing on her chest, its face close to hers, making urgent sounds. Behind it, through the cockpit window, 3 shapes moved against the stars. Shapes that were too large to be ships. Shapes that were alive. Adult Shrikes. Had seen pictures and recordings during her research, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. Each one was the size of a small building, their bodies covered in armor that looked like living darkness. 6 legs, each ending in claws that could tear through starship hulls. Eyes like pools of liquid silver that seemed to look straight through the metal walls and into her soul. They were circling the ship like wolves around wounded prey. The navigation system beeped. They had arrived at the coordinates, the center of the quarantine zone, the place where no ship had ever gone and returned. Should have been terrified. She was badly hurt, alone, and surrounded by the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. By any reasonable measure, she was about to die. Instead, she felt calm. She had made it. Against all odds, against every obstacle, she had brought the cub home. Whatever happened next, she had done what she set out to do. "It is okay," she said to the cub. "Those are your people, they have come to get you." The cub made a sound, not fear, something else. Excitement maybe, recognition. reached for the ship's communication system. Her arms screamed in protest, the torn muscles refusing to cooperate. She forced it to work anyway, pushing through pain that would have made her faint a few days ago. "This is," she said, her voice weak but steady. "Human, I have one of your young. I am returning it to you." Silence, the shrikes continued to circle. Their silver eyes watched, waited. "It was captured by a warlord named I took it back." She paused, swallowed. "I mean no harm. I just want to give it back to its family." More silence, then something touched her mind. It was not words, not exactly. It was images and feelings and memories flowing into her head like water into a cup. She saw the cub being taken from its home. She saw it in the cage, terrified and alone. She saw kicking it, grabbing it, preparing to kill it. And then she saw herself. Through the cub's eyes, she watched herself step out of the shadows and challenge the warlord. She watched herself dodge his attacks, study his weaknesses, fight back against something 10 times her size. She watched herself tear his leg off with her bare hands, her body breaking itself apart to perform an impossible act. She watched herself pick up the cub with bleeding hands and whisper promises of home. The images stopped, gasped, her head spinning from the psychic contact. The cub pressed against her face, purring as if to apologize for the discomfort. Outside, one of the adult shrikes moved closer. It was larger than the others, its armor darker, its eyes brighter. The mother knew this somehow, felt it in her bones. The airlock opened. Did not remember commanding it to open. Perhaps the shrikes had done it themselves. Perhaps it did not matter. The cub looked at her one last time. Its silver eyes met her brown ones. Something passed between them, something that needed no words. Then it bounded toward the airlock, its 6 legs carrying it through the ship, out into the void of space. Shrikes could survive in vacuum, had known this from her research, but seeing it still amazed her. The cub floated free, completely unharmed, crying out in joy as it recognized its mother. The mother caught it with impossible gentleness. Her massive body curled around the small one, protecting it, examining it, making sure it was real. The other adults gathered close, their minds touching the cub's, sharing relief and love and welcome. Watched through the cockpit window. Tears ran down her face, though she was not sure when they had started. She was not crying from pain, though there was plenty of that. She was crying because it was beautiful. Because after all the ugliness she had seen in those 8 months, here was something pure. A family reunited. A baby safe. The mother turned to face the ship. Felt the psychic touch again, gentler this time. A question, an invitation. She shook her head slightly. "I cannot go out there. I cannot breathe in space like you." The mother made a sound that resonated through the vacuum, through the ship's hull, through bones. Then she moved closer. What happened next should have been impossible. The mother shrike pressed one massive clawed hand against the hull of the ship, and the metal seemed to flow around her touch like water. A bubble formed, extending from her body to the ship's airlock. A pocket of air, held in place by some technology or biology that did not understand. An invitation. Unbuckled her harness. Every movement was agony. Her body had been pushed far beyond its limits, and it was letting her know in every possible way. But she made herself stand. She made herself walk to the airlock. She made herself step into the strange bubble of air that connected her to the shrikes. The mother's face was enormous, close enough to touch. Her silver eyes studied with an intelligence that was clearly beyond human. Her breath was warm and smelled like stars. Images filled his mind again. The cub's memories. The mother had seen everything through her child's eyes. The cage, the cruelty, the human who had refused to look away, the human who had destroyed herself to save someone else's baby. Gratitude, deep and vast and ancient. Gratitude that went beyond words. And something else. Shrikes lived long lives, the mother's thoughts told her. They remembered everything. They repaid all debts, good and bad. A warlord had stolen a child and would pay for it someday. But a human had returned the child, and that debt needed to be repaid too. "You do not owe me anything," said. Her voice sounded small against the vastness of space. "I did not do it for a reward. I did it because it was right." The mother's mind pressed against hers again. Yes, she understood. That was exactly why the debt was so large. Kindness given freely was the most valuable thing in the universe. Images flowed. A planet of impossible beauty, cities built into mountains, forests that sang, oceans that glowed, the Shrike, hidden from the rest of the galaxy, protected by creatures that the universe had learned to fear. An offer, a place, a home. Stared at the mother in shock. "You want me to come with you?" "Not as a prisoner, not as a servant, as family." The cub appeared from behind its mother, bouncing through the bubble of air to press against legs. It looked up at her and made that sound again, the one that sounded like a purr and felt like hope. Thought about her old life, the research ship, the crew that was mostly dead now, the galaxy that had chewed her up and spit her out. What did she have to go back to? What was waiting for her in human space? She thought about the station, the slaves in cages, the monsters in power, the universe that allowed such things to happen. She thought about her grandmother's words. "We help because something inside us knows that we are all connected." "Can I help?" asked. "Not just live with you, help make things better, fight the ones who hurt the helpless." The mother's eyes seemed to glow brighter. More images. Shrikes moving through the galaxy, unseen, unstoppable, finding those who preyed on the weak, finding those who kicked bobbies and laughed, finding them and making them stop. Justice, real justice, not the kind that let warlords build empires on suffering. Smiled, it hurt her cracked ribs, it hurt her torn muscles, it hurt every broken piece of her body. But it also felt right. "Then yes," she said, "I will come with you." The mother bowed her head. The other shrikes bowed theirs. Even the cub tried to bow, though it mostly just fell over and rolled around in the air. Laughed, it hurt even more than smiling. The bubble of air began to move, carrying her away from the stolen ship, away from the life she had known, toward something new, toward something strange, toward a future she could never have imagined. As they traveled toward the hidden planet, felt the cub curl up in her arms again. Its purring vibrated through her broken body, easing the pain, helping her heal. The mother's mind touched hers, sharing warmth and welcome. She had gone into space to study creatures. She had lost everything. She had been sold into slavery. She had torn a warlord apart with her bare hands. And now she had a family. The galaxy would learn to tell stories about her. The human who walked into Shrike space and came out changed. The human who stood between predators and prey. The human who proved that kindness was not weakness. But those stories would come later. For now, held the cub close and watched the stars go by. She was going home,